Welcome. Today's post is, I Dream of Yeezy. Published on November 18, 2022. June 19, 2011. The first season of Game of Thrones ends. 1 month later, Kanye and Jay-Z headlined the Watch the Throne tour. And just 2 days later, Kim Kardashian files for divorce from Kris Humphries. 2 years later on October 19, 2013, Kanye's Yeezus tour begins. And just like last time, 2 days after Kanye's tour begins, Kim Kardashian marriage news hits, with Kanye West proposing to Kim on October 21, 2013. What does this all mean? Let's find out. Here are the topics we'll be decoding today. You can always find this list in the description below. If you enjoy this video, please press the like button, and subscribe for weekly full-length blog posts, and shorter, more shareable videos. Let's begin. Some comms are easy to understand just by lining up a timeline with basic logic. May 6, 2010, billionaire song on YouTube. May 6, 2010, $1 trillion stock market crash. Doesn't take a genius to connect money to money. Of course, this begs the question of why. Symbolism is the art of deconstructing, and so we take a closer look at the crash in relation to the song. And the purpose becomes more clear. This crash is called a flash crash, a stock market crash unique for being quick and then with a quick recovery. Note the name of the singer. Travis Lazarus. That's a symbol of coming back from the dead. A perfect symbol for the crash, as unlike other types of stock market crashes, this one is uniquely defined by a quick loss and quick return. It is also the first major flash crash listed, which implies it was a new thing. May 6, 2010, billionaire song released by Travis Lazarus. May 6, 2010, $1 trillion stock market flash crash. The song has lyrics focusing on giving his friends money, and adopting children. Video has him going to Geneva, symbol of the UN and CERN. So why is it called billionaire instead of trillionaire? Well, note the person who caused the crash. $3.4 billion trades. I'm sure I could dig a lot more out of this, but it's always a matter of time management. I decode stuff like this by the dozens every post, but not all comms are as easy to solve as lining them up. We just went over how a man named Lazarus was used as a symbol for the flash crash. This is a logical symbol to use, as the stocks would quickly return to health rather than a true crash. It gives the necessary information to whomever it was addressed to. Given we are dealing with trillions of dollars, being simple was probably important. But many symbols are not so easy. In fact, many are used in conjunction with other symbols. Much like how combining one color with another color makes a third color. So if one celebrity symbolizes one thing and another celebrity symbolizes another thing, then what does it mean when they are discussed together? For example, if we go by the news, the most powerful couple in the mid-2010s was Beyoncé and Jay-Z. What does it mean for Beyoncé and Jay-Z to be married? What does it mean for Jay-Z and Kanye West to collaborate? I note Kanye West's big break came on September 11, 2001 with his work on Jay-Z's album, The Blueprint. Interesting day for that. I'll get back to that connection. We first need to decode them separately, and once we understand their unique symbolism, we will understand whether there is any greater meaning to having them pair up. Let's begin with Beyoncé. Beyoncé. I already decoded one comm of hers in a prior post. January 20, 2009, Halo, by Beyoncé. January 20, 2009, inauguration of Obama. Note the newspaper in the video. Did Obama get good press coverage early on? Like he was being worshipped. Contrast with Trump, who got 91% negative press coverage early on. It was a comm to mark Obama as a press darling. People would faint at his rallies, they were so hyped up for him. However, that doesn't really explain anything about Beyoncé as a symbol, does it? To solve this one, let's begin with her last name. Knowles. Knowles. No less. I suspect this is a symbol of being unaware. As in not comms aware, This clarifies the point of why she would sing Halo, as the people worshipping Obama were being driven to view him as though he were their guardian angel. This does not necessarily mean Beyoncé herself is unaware, only that I suspect she represents this concept. Most people know her by her first name, Beyoncé. If you've been reading my posts for a month or two, you already know part of what this represents. That special A at the end is a comma I've decoded in many posts. Officially it denotes a loan word. Share equals share. Symbol again of a loan. Her name is perfect for that exact symbol. In comms it denotes something being sent from one party to another. For example, in Pokemon this was tied to link cables, and the whole game began from brainstorming about a game that would be about exchanging. How do you translate these symbols of sharing into Beyoncé though? Let's consider her history. As a major artist she became nationally known through a group called Destiny's Child, but before even that she had a girl group called Girls' Time. Lyrics of their first televised song. I can't believe that a girl like me would be the one that he would want to spend his time with. He's the reason why I got a smile on my face. If this is wrong, I don't want to be free. So check it out, hey, it's time to get busy. Guaranteed to make you jam. Keep these lyrics in mind, I'll return to them. This was a start much like Britney Spears, and it began her trajectory to stardom. This ties into the symbol of Destiny's Child. As in a child destined for great things. This also ties into her first name again, as Beyoncé means beyond others in basic definition. So how do you reconcile beyond others plus child destined for greatness with no less? The answer is in how they obtained a ticket to stardom. Certain kids do this through a payment they weren't aware they made. As in a child that was used for blackmail without their awareness. This is achieved by putting the child to sleep just like Alice in Wonderland. In fact, that book came out literally a year after chloroform became common practice for doctors. I.e., widely available for uses like in blackmail. Remember those Beyoncé Girls' Time lyrics? Read them again. I can't believe that a girl like me would be the one that he would want to spend his time with. He's the reason why I got a smile on my face. If this is wrong, I don't want to be free. So check it out, hey, it's time to get busy. Guaranteed to make you jam. I believe Beyoncé acts as the poster to promote this very practice, a symbol for other kids involved in that system, hence her father being a Xerox sales manager. Symbol of making copies. She acts as a promotional tool for other children to get involved in blackmail, to be like her. That by offering a child to the system they gain their own ticket to benefit from it. Like John Benet, again with that special E. Note some of her songs. I didn't look through many and just picked the first ones I saw, so I'm sure there are better examples. Still, for these to be the first I see. Songs about dreams and giving her body to a man. Baby boy lyrics, I see you in my dreams. So I looked at the timing of that one, I noticed a famous Lindsay Lohan film about a child and adult switching places. Consider that in context of the bedroom. August 4, 2003. Freaky Friday Lohan switch places with Jamie Lee Curtis. August 3, 2003. Baby Boy Beyoncé single album Dangerously in Love. Remember what I said about how symbols work together? If her calm ties into someone being taken advantage of while asleep, what then might Jay-Z symbolize? What does Z symbolize? Z equals ZZZ as in sleep. As in the person putting their family to sleep for the creation of blackmail of others. This explains them being a power couple as their comms are perfectly complementary. Therefore, if I look at famous events in their shared history, whatever is most promoted will likely be tied to comms of this very practice. Like the wedding. Same day of wedding, this article was published about putting more cameras on a space spider than ever before. Spider/spy. However, we are getting ahead of ourselves, let's dig a bit into Jay-Z just to make sure. Jay-Z. Note his big break being tied to a Jay-Z song. Album released the same day as a game show called Match Game with sex jokes. As in matching up blackmail targets to child. That Match Game connection got me to dig into Match Game itself. I noticed one of the most recent major iterations aired the same day as Alice in Wonderland. Symbolism of a girl being put to sleep for blackmail, as I have gone into in many posts. Heck, I went into it earlier in this post. March 5, 2010. Match Game. March 5, 2010. Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. The very first iteration will often be the most telling for comms. I noticed the same day the debut of the first mega-hit anime, Astro Boy, began. December 31, 1962. Match Game premiere. January 1, 1963. Astro Boy highest-rated Japan anime begins. Symbolism of a nearly naked robot, recording, boy with guns inside his butt. The robot plus child symbol is a consistent one that's tied to these kinds of acts, as I've gone over in posts. In fact, Astro Boy is considered to be the origin of all manga/anime by some, so it's interesting to note that it ties its origins to Walt Disney, which itself began with what? Alice in Wonderland. You can see how it all ties back to this root symbol of blackmail. Astro Boy beginning the more modern recording operations. Looking at Jay-Z's big album that served as Kanye's breakthrough. Note the lyrics. Narcolepsy explicitly referenced. As in someone who instantly goes to sleep without their choice being involved. Song repeats request for girls to sign up for sex. Symbol of exactly that, people who want to get in on the blackmail circuit. Looking at other times. One of his biggest albums released within one day of Britney Spears' first major album. Sending comms tied to underage sex. September 29, 1998, Volume 2. Hard Knock Life 5 times Platinum Jay-Z, Money, Cash, Hose, featuring DMX. September 30, 1998, 16 years old Britney Spears, Baby One More Time. Note, as a child Britney Spears sang with an adult voice, but when she was 16 she sang with a child voice. Symbol in both cases. A child as an adult symbol. I haven't fully pinpointed which party does what, but I have traced some of the computer comms, that blackmail is recorded in private homes across the country using surveillance cameras. Large transitions in these operations are often marked with pop culture comms in the form of famous songs and shows. A couple of posts ago I showed how South Park was used for markers of the computer part of this. Jay-Z fills in another point on that timeline. August 13, 1997, South Park debut. Plus 2 days. August 15, 1997, GNOME Primary OS for Linux debut. August 15, 1997, Full Monty, New Employment by Stripping. Include scene with GNOME that decides job, leave your hat on. December 14, 1998, GNOME's primary backer, Red Hat, sells to Intel/Netscape. Plus 2 days. December 16, 1998, Underwear Gnomes episode, South Park 17. Plus 2 days. December 18, 1998, Money Cash Hose by Jay-Z. December 18, 1998, Pokemon Trading Card Game by Hudson Soft. December 18, 1998, You've Got Mail, Tom Hanks Starbucks plus Yahoo. The episode being about little gnomes that steal children's underwear and have a mysterious objective they never talk about for after they take the underwear. Somehow though, Phase 3 is profit. As in the rewards of selling a child. Turns out Jay-Z had a song about whores and money the same day of the South Park episode about making money through kids' underwear. Check my Red Hat post for more on this, as the timeline is longer and even more clear than above. I don't know how involved many of these companies were. At times, I have found that some of those markers are for an opposing side, letting it be known their disapproval. I know this system is being torn down by those inside it, long disgusted by the MK child abuse parts of it, so I urge you not to assume the worst just because I've decoded something disturbing. I'll continue this thought at the end of the post. The primary music subject of this post is Kanye West, and it's due to a request. Kanye West got his big start through Jay-Z on that album released the same day as 9/11. Clearly whatever Kanye symbolizes is an incredibly big deal, but what might it be? Kanye West. He was an early and probably the largest celebrity that turned to an ally for Trump in 2016. This push to paint him as mentally ill is not new, even though it certainly is convenient for the media as a way to paint the times he supported Trump. I believe he's an MK victim, and this may have even been confirmed by him in recent weeks. He asserts he was mentally misdiagnosed and drugged out of his mind to perform as desired as a celebrity. He has a curious set of texts from a famous celebrity trainer to back this up. Someone threatening to institutionalize Kanye again, putting him in Zombieland forever with medications. It's rather scary. However, this is not the way it works as best I can tell. This is almost certainly a coordinated play with Harley Pasternak. They do control celebrities like this, but they aren't so clumsy to implicate themselves as they do it. This is making what was hidden visible. By explicitly asserting what would normally be implied makes abuse more public than would normally happen. This is someone who flipped and is now putting on a show for the public. Furthermore, it puts this guy's past in the crosshairs, working with the military in drugs. Great news. It means they are perhaps preparing for real exposure by having friendlies effectively make visible what has long been hidden. This also implies Kanye has a symbolism connected to MKUltra, but given how broad that system is, we can do a lot better than mental illness as a symbol. However, just that is a good start, as we can see his original success was tied to dropping out of college and then being inspired by an album titled Miseducation. Thus his music channels teaching badly. That sounds like the kind of symbol most likely to be pushed, to have someone mentally ill be worshipped and imitated. I don't use the word worshipped lightly, because keep in mind this is a man who has been on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine as Jesus. But to really understand Kanye's symbolism, we have to look at the things they are most famous for. The only thing I knew of him a few years back was this famous meme of him interrupting Taylor Swift. Note how Taylor Swift's award-winning song he tainted was about a girl being overlooked for another girl. Lyric of being envious of a more popular girl that a guy likes. The same situation Kanye West presents as he fawns over Beyoncé during Taylor Swift's award speech. So that's not likely a coincidence, and it also works with mentally ill as a symbol. South Park, and many others, have parroted this. In this episode, Kanye West is desperate to prove his girlfriend Kim Kardashian is not a hobbit. However, the running gag is he continuously proves by his own admission that she is a hobbit, and he is just in denial. Why would South Park call Kim Kardashian a hobbit? Note the sequence of episodes of South Park. The Hobbit was the finale of season 17, and the preceding 3 episodes were a trilogy about Game of Thrones, a book series most associated with Lord of the Rings. Why does that matter? Well, take a look at this. June 19, 2011. Game of Thrones Season 1 ends. October 29, 2011. Kanye plus Jay-Z watched the Throne Tour, highest-grossing hip-hop tour ever. Plus 2 days. October 31, 2011. Kim Kardashian divorce Kris filed. Plus 2 years. October 19, 2013. Kanye Yeezy's tour begins, follow-up to Watch the Throne Tour. Plus 2 days. October 21, 2013. Kanye West proposes to Kim Kardashian. December 2013. South Park Kanye West plus Game of Thrones parodies. Did you catch all that? Read it carefully, as that is a sequence far beyond any possibility of coincidence. Kanye with his Watch the Throne Tour, being the biggest of all time, and right around that time we have Game of Thrones, the biggest new show of the year. Then look at the marriage/divorce dates, and they perfectly match up with Kim and Kanye's life. Their marriage/divorce was timed perfectly to mirror the Game of Thrones show. A show with a plot focusing on powerful marriages to secure alliances between kings. To make it more clear, South Park parodied Game of Thrones in right before their season finale about Kanye making a trilogy of episodes about Game of Thrones. This trilogy about Game of Thrones episodes is focused on the video game console war, and this will be surprisingly relevant going forward. What does Kanye West have to do with video games? Part of the answer can be found when I looked at Kim Kardashian and Kanye West's relationship early on. It all comes down to a little cat named Mercy that Kanye gave to Kim Kardashian. A cat she named after a song made by Kanye West. April 3, 2012. Kanye West Mercy on Cruel Summer album. This is tied to a Kanye West gift cat to Kim Kardashian. Plus one day. April 4, 2012. Grumpy cat born. Famous internet cat whose grumpy expression is due to dwarfism. September 13, 2012. Nintendo announces Wii U release date, failed bomb console. Plus one day. September 14, 2012. Kanye West Cruel Summer album, Mercy is the first track. December 7, 2012. Mercy the cat's death date. Plus one day. December 8, 2012. Wii U release date. These are all connected events, albeit it's hard to understand why without comms. A famous celebrity cat, Mercy, is tied to arguably the most famous internet cat, Grumpy Cat. In practically any appearance you may find will always be discussed with a focus on its dwarfism. Dwarf/Hobbit/ gnome symbolism. This gets to why South Park associates her with a hobbit. Hobbit/gnome/dwarf symbolism is all tied into secret surveillance. But it's much deeper than just that. Note the lyrics of the song Mercy. Suicide Drive. The date connected to the Nintendo Wii U, the first Nintendo console since the Virtual Boy to fail. Nintendo committing suicide with their Wii U. It ties into the larger console war and tech race. You may remember from my last post that Hollywood used two hobbit/dwarf-like creatures to symbolize both Nintendo and Sony. This helps clarify why they would utilize hobbit symbolism as tied to Nintendo. June 1991. Sony PlayStation add-on for SNES revealed at CES show. July 1991. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Check the last post for more on that last one. It's an important comm as it's incredibly precise. The film was meant as a marker for a partnership that died. You may also remember how South Park portrayed Nintendo as spying on children using Pokemon and turning them into terrorists. All of these are relevant, but let's back up for a moment. Once again. April 3, 2012. Kanye West song Mercy on the Cruel Summer album. This is tied to a Kanye West gift cat to Kim Kardashian. Plus one day. April 4, 2012. Grumpy cat born. Famous internet cat whose grumpy expression is due to dwarfism. September 13, 2012. Nintendo announces Wii U release date, failed bomb console. Plus one day. September 14, 2012. Kanye West Cruel Summer album, Mercy is the first track. December 7, 2012. Mercy the cat's death date. Plus one day. December 8, 2012. Wii U release date. Accepting mercy, what kind of mercy? What are mentally ill people used for? How does the Hobbit South Park episode end? It ends with Kim Kardashian getting Kanye West to threaten a child and to stop spreading rumors that Kim Kardashian is a hobbit. So yeah, symbol of using MK operatives to force compliance. Something prevalent all around the world, keeping the status quo. I'll get more into that later. I'll also get into Kim Kardashian later, though just to demonstrate. January 23, 2011. Romeo and Juliet includes Elton John plus Lady Gaga song. January 23, 2011. Kim Kardashian and Kourtney take New York debut. Again with gnomes. Remember the underwear gnome symbolism from South Park, as that'll be an important concept going forward. South Park is a treasure trove to decode Kanye West, so let's start there from the very first episode he is focused on. They had an earlier episode than Hobbit dedicated to Kanye West, and it's one of their more famous episodes to boot. Kanye West plus Fishsticks. On the surface, this South Park episode, Fishsticks, is a one-note joke about how Kanye has an ego so big he cannot even understand a simple joke. A joke about being asked if you like fish sticks, and if you agree then you are a gay fish, because the word sticks when used in fish sticks sounds like dicks. The show escalates in misunderstanding until Kanye West accepts being a gay fish and goes to live at sea to have sex with fish. You may think I'm reaching with some of what I'm about to describe, but just give me time to explain, as there is a lot more going on here than meets the eye. It helps to remember that Eric Theodore Cartman began the show with the first episode involving him being anal probed and having an 80-foot satellite dish inside his anus that tracked his every move. Note the focus on the aliens being pedophiles, and everything in the episode is about things either going in or coming out of Cartman as if it were sex. That's the literal first episode of South Park. Alongside Cartman's mother being a literal prostitute, Cartman symbolized a child being used to blackmail celebrities. This is why the episode ends with Scott Baio giving Cartman pink eye, a condition typically associated with getting feces in the eye. With that in mind, note how the episode begins with Eric Theodore Cartman and Jimmy Valmer agreeing to partner up to write jokes. Note the sexual innuendo of Jimmy's first joke about a squirrel trying to keep his nuts dry. All of this dialogue is an elaborate sex joke, but you have to read between the lines. This is followed by a joke about a fireman and Pollock eating marshmallows, I'll explain this in a moment, then a joke about the Pope. And the comedy writing pauses as a Black Widow spider is taken out by Jimmy's mother with a South Park newspaper. Jimmy suggests his mother may have saved his life by taking out the spider. Cartman asks for something to eat, something stronger than the fruit. Note the fruit the mother brings in has 2 balls, 1 banana. The symbol here of Cartman wanting something stronger than fruit is in Fruit of the Loom symbolism, underwear, i.e. nudity, and this leads us to Fishsticks joke. Now about that calm about fireman eating marshmallow. This ties into the beaver eating marshmallow in the Jubilee episode 1 decoded a couple of posts ago. The marshmallow being melted into white goo by a beaver symbolizes. I think I don't need to spell this out. These comms were also about spying on kids with nude films being collected and safeguarded. In this case with Apple/Macintosh. Teddy bear plus trash and so on. The nudity is a byproduct of surveillance of families, and the comms are not necessarily promoting it, but merely aware of how illegal collecting such things is. Beaver is a common symbol for a woman's sexual organ. Macintosh symbolism is tied to spying, as in spying on people with Macs using Gnome's OS on Linux. I cover this in plenty of posts, and in each one I get a little closer to nailing down the symbols. Lisa, as it connects to spying using early computers. The first one with a trash can, which based on my digging is how files were pulled. It also ties into Simpsons, as I went into last post. Much like with South Park, those comms are also about spying on families. Or more specifically families that have one member who is comms aware and trade privacy of friends, families, and or neighbors for a path to success. 1976. First Apple Mac released $666.66. 1978, Steve Jobs' daughter Lisa Brennan born. 1978, Apple Lisa project begins. Plus 9 years. 1987, Steve Jobs acknowledges for the first time Lisa is his 9-year-old daughter. 1987, Simpsons premieres with Lisa Simpson as the smart 8-year-old daughter of a nuclear power plant worker. Rejecting underwear/Fruit of the Loom plate and going for Fishsticks. The joke is about secret child abuse. However, it's hidden inside a joke that a regular person will view as a regular joke. It is a perfect symbolism comm in that way, as it exists invisibly through layers. This is why the joke becomes a phenomenon. The actual joke underneath this one is a symbol of blackmail involving children. It being a world-spanning success is because most celebrities are blackmailed. The only person who doesn't understand the joke is Kanye West. This is because as discussed as an MK victim he is not actually comms aware. Or at least he wasn't likely comms aware when this show took place. The joke with this context isn't that he doesn't understand the joke as the audiences does, but that he doesn't understand that his success is not due to his talents as he thinks but due to his connection to Fishsticks. The way blackmail with kids works is the child is sedated, so they don't know what happened to them. Kanye most likely was abused without his knowledge. Given Fishsticks and his entire career is built upon this without his understanding. Children used for sex can also be part of the MK system. This MK aspect is likely why they had him wear stripes in the above right, to make sure comms-aware viewers understood he was being driven to say what he said rather than being coached. If you watch it, it's rather robotic like programming even. The joke about Fishsticks is deeper than even just him not understanding comms, but much like being driven to bash Bush after Katrina. He also has songs that constantly references his connection to being used as blackmail as a child. This is why the principal plot outside of Kanye is Cartman believing he wrote the Fishsticks joke when it was all Jimi. Who wrote the joke? Note Kanye got his samples from a crate from Family and the bear that became his icon was just coincidentally at the school they shot the cover at. Just luck in both cases. Not just a bear but a teddy bear. Teddy bear symbolism tied to sleep with a child. Note Eric Cartman's middle name. Theodore equals Teddy. I have many posts going over how Teddy symbolizes sex with a child when used in certain contexts. Define Teddy worn to sleep. So as this iconography Kanye has of a teddy bear was all symbolism, but he didn't understand it. I.e. people around him were the ones making him famous and putting comms into everything he did. September 11, 2007. Britney Spears forgets underwear. September 11, 2007. Kanye West graduation, teddy bear finale. Another variant of this I go into in other posts is from Leave It to Beaver. Starring the forever naive boy Theodore, Teddy, Beaver, Sex, Cleaver. The lingo used to coordinate these kinds of sexual encounters is done through alien symbolism, hence the E.T. song with Katy Perry. When you understand the joke, many of his songs become very different. It's a joke told at his expense. Note the connection with E.T. and Katy Perry. From Another World. This references how MK ops are all like their own planets that explorers visit to be blackmailed. Her songs like Teenage Dream, note the lyrics starting with thinking she's pretty without any makeup on. Symbol of someone offered without knowledge, and thus they wouldn't wear makeup to bed. Katy Perry. Admiral Perry going to Japan. Symbolism of going to another world and opening a trade. He had talents that made him a suitable symbol, and the running gag every song to a certain extent is these jokes about what he represents and doesn't understand. A prominent lyric from a song of his, "You are not invited to the other side of sanity." Outright asserting his insanity as it distinguishes him from other people in that world. Just to test this theory about Katy Perry symbolizing going to new worlds, I looked a bit deeper. Note she married Russell Brand, a comm tied to KGB in spy exchanges. July 9, 2010. Despicable Me, Russian accented supervillain adopting children. July 9, 2010. US-Russia swap 14 spies. Note his name being GRU, same for Russian forces. With Russell Brand voicing his partner in crime tied to the UK. Married the same year as the film, which makes the connection that much more likely. How do they get people at high levels of intel to cooperate? Note that date not only coincides with the Russian spy exchange, but it coincided with the most popular dog on the internet back in 2010, Boo, a teddy bear pom. When another celebrity, Kesha, got a new boyfriend. This is the post that began the trek of Boo, Spook, the teddy bear pom the most popular. This was specifically noted to be near an animal sanctuary. A strange thing to add if it's not a comm. October 23, 2010. Katy Perry weds British actor-comedian Russell Brand. October 22, 2010. Kesha Boo teddy bear new boyfriend post. This was exactly 2 months after one of the most popular posts highlighted in articles. quickly getting 17/Q million likes on Facebook. August 24, 2010, Teenage Dream, Katy Perry. August 24, 2010, Teddy Bear, Boo, Understands Commands post. August 24, 2010, Hunger Games Mockingjay Suzanne Collins. There were only a few videos/posts that had high views on YouTube, and looking at those, I noticed the second biggest post was within a day of South Park making a video about Inception, a movie about putting people to sleep. It was also within 2 days of Tiger Woods' sex tape news. October 19, 2010, Tiger Woods' sex tape, a fake. October 20, 2010, Inception Stan and Mr. Mackey suffer from compulsive hoarding, and a group of experts try to find out the reasons for this. October 21, 2010, Boo Cave Dweller, 3 million views, second biggest post. This one could easily be coincidence. I'm not even grabbing screen caps of these as they are just curiosities, as sleep caught my eye. One screen cap that I will show though, is Al Walid, who we know is connected to blackmail with children ops. November 2, 2010, Al Walid Prince Charles reopen Hotel London. November 2, 2010, I Wanna Be the Boss Shy with Hello Kitty as first boss. November 3, 2010, Boo, Cutest Dog in the World, So Smart. Top YouTube video, by Wally. Wally being a Al Walid nickname, check my Wally post, so for that name being here, it all seems to be connected to those blackmail ops. I also highlighted a fan game as I had it noted due to how prominent it was. Hello Kitty symbolism I go over in a few posts. Famously without a mouth. Note the top 3 media franchises. The second one is the silent cat, followed by Teddy Bear owned by Disney Winnie the Pooh. And then we have Pokemon with that special E that denotes loan words like in Beyoncé. In Hello Kitty's case, note it's also a coin purse, symbol for buying. The point is Kanye West was elevated into stardom due to his connection with blackmail and being brainwashed. Hence the joke made about Cartman, he was in the room, as in he played a part in blackmail. Note his symbol glasses with horizontal stripes, as this is a blind icon. Asks the doctor to conform he has no gills, not capable of seeing comms. Water equals info, check other posts if that's new to you, not comms aware. Not aware of what happened to him, and as shown with the samples and jokes it's that he has a giant ego despite not recognizing other people are carrying him. So the ego joke works fully as part of the comm, it's one of several layers. I'm sure you've heard in the past how Shakespeare is written with jokes to the upper class and lower class, same is true with this, just jokes and plot has to work with comms aware and non-comms aware. Once you understand this, the incredible amount of terrible shows/movies start to make sense. Few can make shows that juggle both with quality. Anyway, this ties into how Cartman gets delusional and remembers things differently. However, there is a much deeper level to this as a comm, because it's not just about blackmail but also about MK ops. Cartman killing the spider, not his mother. This is symbolism for how MK ops are deployed to remove obstacles like people spying. The mother by hitting the spy with the newspaper was in deploying a threat to remove person that might screw up things. Therefore Cartman indeed was the one that swatted the spider in the original story. However, if you were using symbols, technically you would use the mother to represent this. After all, do you view the programmer or the programmed as responsible? That is one of the subplots hidden between the lines here. This will become much more clear later on in the other 2 times we revisit this memory of Cartman. In fact, it's an incredibly good comm to pay attention to, so just keep it in mind for now, as later I'm going to expand on it greatly. So Kanye doesn't get the joke, and that is tied to his songs. Note once again we have horizontal blind eye stripe symbolism, when not with his glasses they use his jacket. I have only scratched the surface of Kanye's connection to things. Becoming the richest in the world is no small feat, it would have to be tied to something massive like, say, Facebook. February 4, 2004. Facebook launched by college dropout. +6. February 10, 2004. Kanye West, college dropout, debut released. Why connect him with Facebook? Well, what is one of the things Facebook has been used for? Playing a role in capture. This may give you the wrong impression on the methodology, as the way it's presented in the film is of a wealthy girl kidnapped and brought to the yacht of the wealthy. When in practice it's girls being girls and promoting themselves as pretty online. Unknown to them, some of them have comms-aware families that can then sell those children to interested parties. Everything hides in plain sight. A child sedated will not remember being raped. Anyway, so the joke about Kanye not getting the joke and believing he is the one that got him his stardom is told through Cartman. Mental gymnastics, believing he really is the best in the world and other people placed him on that throne. So we return to the Fishsticks origin again. Remember that the first episode of South Park involved an 80-foot satellite dish stuck in his butt. Aliens probing him. To the right is Ben Affleck sleeping with Cartman's hand. His mother, the prostitute, isn't surprised and is happy about it. So this time, instead of Cartman killing a spider, it switches to a dragon he slays. I'll return to this when we get to the final dream sequence. But for now, just like the spider killing, the symbolism is for MK being used to take out enemies. Just like Kanye in this episode does. Defining the MK threat. Both South Park episodes he is in has this level to it. So this conversation is about working with someone who is disabled. Cartman here works as a joke about people working with Kanye and secretly doing everything that makes him successful, and yet he is constantly acting as though he does everything. This is the result of programming a mind. It's not his fault, and the fear of Kanye going berserk due to that programming is a reason why many likely keep their distance from him and don't say anything to contradict what can sound like delusion. How do you take credit for something you didn't do? Take this with Kanye West in mind. The symbol of some of his most famous beats coming from his garage and the algorithm support he got that nobody else got. How exactly can he view himself as responsible? Yet he does. That's why the plot about his ego is so prominent. Without comms awareness, the ego plot still works, it just has no justification on how he became famous like the subtext. The answer is in the final flashback. Note the final escalation from the mom killing the Black Widow to Cartman killing the Black Widow to Cartman killing a dragon of some kind, and finally he kills an army of Jew robots by fire. This is a massive find because we have an equivalency now in a place I can easily dissect. Remember before with the Tron connection? Defeating the game, as in destroying Atari, which had control of the market at the time. This is when they helped put Nintendo in the position Atari was back in the 1980s. The symbol of Mossad tying to the tech pushing back in the 80s tied to blackmail with kids. Having Nintendo/Japan take over what had been Mossad. May 17, 1977, Likud, Netanyahu, wins first victory over left wing in over 30 years. May 17, 1977, Atari co-founder Bushnell founds Chuck E. Cheese. May 18, 1977, DOE passed Senate 74-10. Chuck E. Cheese. 1982 Tron to the video game crash. Nintendo then arrives and takes over the industry. Note that outside of Mario, the biggest franchise for Nintendo not made by Nintendo was the Dragon Quest series. This is a game about killing a dragon. Note the original creator's first game was Love Match Tennis. Remember the match game symbolism? How it was tied to JZZZ. March 5, 2010. Match game. March 5, 2010. Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. December 31, 1962. Match game premiere. January 1, 1963. Astro Boy highest rated Japan anime begins. February 4, 1980. Dr. Slump begins, little girl with tape recorded built into her. February 4, 1980. Studio 54 closes, Celebrity Sex Dungeon. Dragon Quest was tied to Akira Toriyama, famously the guy behind Dragon Ball. A manga that begins with a naked boy fishing. One of the earliest stories involves Goku dressing up as a girl to seduce a pig dressed up like a North Korean dictator. The manga he made before that one was an Astro Boy parody involving a little girl with a tape recorder built inside her. The connection with Studio 54 closing is the recording ops were being transitioned, hence a little girl with a tape recorder built into her makes sense. The point is the comms attached to Akira Toriyama are likely to have a sexual connotation. This seems like a good point to give my theory about Dragon Quest slimes. Smile plus lubrication. The Dragon Quest mascot. Metal slime equals surveillance of it. Blackmail and then repeat, over and over again. This is how they killed the dragon of Mossad. Mossad had blackmailed, and so they simply blackmailed them again. Many together turn into a king, as in a ton of blackmailed people working together. And then a dwarf-sized one as symbolic of the Hobbit/Gnome comms. One of Enix's early partners was Quintet. I bring them up because while their games don't focus on killing dragons, I have been working my way through famous old games and the comms in early Quintet games are perfect fit for this post. Their first game has you control a naked boy shooting arrows to turn monsters into human beings. Note the plot involves child sacrifice of a boy named Teddy. Note Teddy Ruxpin, a bear with tapes built into him. Recording symbolism. Ties to the NES early days and likely was used as a symbol for this. In this game and most early Quintet/Enix games you act as a servant of God. The following game they did called Soul Blazer is even more transparent. Note as an avatar of God you trade seeds to Talking Squirrel in exchange for a Psycho Sword which can stun otherwise invincible monsters. Seed symbolism being funding and Psycho Sword being getting an MK victim. It also has a Teddy and Lisa. Teddy being boy whose mother forces him to give you free goat food so that you can trade it for the secrets of a goat. This ties into getting a dream rod which the character breaks into the house of a Lisa and then spies on their dreams. Symbolism for breaking into the computer. Lisa symbolism for Steve Jobs, who once worked at Atari. It all ties together. I've decoded some of Dragon Quest in other posts, but it's not nearly as transparent as this one. The dragon being slayed as tied to the Jubot army that Cartman, MK, kills seems to have signified how MK progressed. That culminated in Clinton being elected. The fear of murder put him into power. Don't misunderstand how this system works though, it's not the companies themselves that brainwash, at least not exactly. There is a role for media in brainwashing, but when we are talking about MK's sacrifice it's done by local networks of clowns. There is a big difference in someone brainwashed by media as the masses are but still having a loving family and the potential to make friends and an MK subject. MK victims are broken, trauma is used to create a suggestible state, and this is why most who live to adulthood likely have severe and complex mental problems. The company role in this is debatable and in the future will surely be one of the biggest subjects for scrutiny. There are many potential excuses that could be given as the whole nature of that system is to hide in plain sight. That any single person throwing a rock wouldn't kill a man, but when a whole crowd does it the man dies, which man in that group is responsible? These are moral quandaries we will have to consider in the future. I contend that when given a chance to do the right thing, if that chance was taken, and they fought against the machine they helped build, that is what should matter most. All human beings follow routine and that horrible system is routine. Before I can say more I need to finish learning it. Many of these pieces of media portray themselves as having been attacked first. The MK system seems to be portrayed as a defensive measure against invasion and others attacking them. That without protection of a threat, they would be taken out themselves. There is much I'm not sure of about this. Some could be nothing more than making excuses, and few would make media that portrayed themselves as the villain. Everyone is the hero to their own story after all. I've covered these extensively in many posts, but for many of you I'm sure this will be hard to follow. You practically have to have read a dozen posts with perfect memory of them to grasp that train of logic, so I'll be in the future fully going over it, but for now let's continue these. Cartman takes the blame and offers to have Kanye kill him instead of Jimi. This is out of character for him, but this is how MK ops are used as a shell to protect the ones that drive them. It also works on the surface level, as without comms it simply becomes a lesson to Kanye West about humility. He can't be told what actually happened to him or why he became what he is, but at the very least he can be made to understand that his behavior isn't always rational. Brainwash is not something that can be fixed easily, and Kanye misunderstands and then literally goes and has sex with fish. This fits his history of misunderstanding what is going on around him. It also fits the reality, as this is how he became famous, by getting Fishsticks. Albeit without knowing what they were. And that's literal as well as symbolic, as the food items would be used in code, thus the nights he would be served fish sticks would indeed be the very nights of it, as it would signify from the mother, or other person, to tell parties that things were prepared. I don't view this as being necessarily malevolent, it's not them that were involved. If you were employed to send comms, there are more cruel ways the message could be sent than this. It is a joke being told to multiple audiences about the absurdity of the world they, and we, live in. It's also educational for comms, and you remember the fact that a dragon was connected in symbolism, right? Well, the very next episode Kanye was in also was tied to dragons, quite a coincidence, as it's an episode about the Hobbit. A plot about going to a cave for a dragon. It aired as the season finale, with the prior 3 episodes being about Game of Thrones, specifically dragons. Hobbit and Gnome. And this episode focuses on a character named Lisa, once again, symbol of being spied on. Character as part of a cheer team has weight issues and psychological problems, and likely another MK symbol. Wendy convinces Lisa to ask Butters out. However, when it comes to situations like this with MK victims, situations like this are often traps. Setups for failure. She even fears being made fun of, but Wendy pushes harder to make sure she does it. Rejection followed by both sides being teased. The jokes of him being asked out by a fat girl, and then talks of her sitting on him and being so ugly her face was hit by a hot shovel. Also, it's notable that Butters was telling a story about a family with the mustache saw the cupcakes. Cake symbolism is for a plan. Kikaku equals plan in Japan, cupcake in context is small plan, and likely this scenario is such a thing. As in MK, subjects are programmed to hurt one another, as the people around them condition them to react in ways that will make other MK subjects be more traumatized. Conditioned to hurt and conditioned to be hurt, all leading to a broken brain. The reason he rejected her is said to be because he wants a girl like Kim Kardashian. This brings up the primary plot of the episode, that celebrities like Kim Kardashian use Photoshop to achieve unrealistic images and damage girls' psyche. She reiterates throughout the episode that Kim Kardashian actually looks like a hobbit. This show is full of characters that symbolize different part of ops, so of course the primary female character also has a comm. Wendy Testaburger, in relation to Lisa Burger. Wendy's symbolism by itself I wouldn't connect to blackmail, but because her name is very specifically Wendy plus Testa Burger, the symbolism is clearly invoking the fast food chain which is tied to blackmail ops. Combining Wendy plus child plus burger. Invoking Wendy's burgers. Note the origin story of the girl being someone that can't say her own name, so they created a fake name for her of Wendy. As in how to refer to a target, it becomes a utility. This does not necessarily mean Wendy is comms aware. Remember Beyoncé, these types of ops are intended to be done without awareness. Alice is also a symbol for this, but the difference is Alice is high-class ultra-wealthy symbolism. Wendy's is cheap fast food. The two names have the same symbol tied to unaware rape, but critical differences in availability and price. This is the juxtaposition of having the two little girls with the last name Burger, Lisa as the ugliest girl in school and Wendy as captain of the cheerleaders and just about every other organization tied to girls in the history of the show. Note the discussion the psychologist gives to her about pushing against his judgment. That she's gel, which she dismisses. This will become a running joke throughout the episode, and while it is a bad joke without comms, there is a deeper meaning I'll explain now, though it will mean jumping ahead. Keep in mind context, that Wendy started a rumor of Kim Kardashian being a hobbit. She has put out slander to a woman with millions of dollars who was engaged to another person of extreme wealth. What do powerful people do when threatened? The answer to that question is why the psychologist and several other characters constantly warn her about pushing against Kim Kardashian. Everyone warning her to not be jelly. Specifically, he tells Wendy she dodged a bullet this time. Note her dismissive attitude. She doesn't realize the calm is deadly serious, which is the point. So instead she escalates it, going on TV, and the TV people also warn her about being jelly, and that they need to bring her to jelly school. At the end of this she asserts that nothing in this world will stop her from doing what is right here. Nothing in this world. So what happens? We get Kanye West breaking into her house. This is the threat made real. MK ops activating to take out people that cross certain boundaries. Kanye doesn't kill her, but he scares her, and then tells a story about his wife being a hobbit that can be like Beyoncé with Photoshop. Symbol of anyone trying to do the right thing gets threatened by MK. Wendy spends the episode trying to reverse the psychological damage done by society, and this is what happens to that. Note how Kim Kardashian prayed to God for a solution, and God sent Kanye West to fix things. Symbol of how ops can be purchased like MK. This leads to Wendy apologizing and then committing to create a fake image like Kim Kardashian while crying. Because I skipped over so much of the episode, that last part may not make sense, but I just wanted to explain that jelly comes first, as I felt it was the most important symbol to get out of the way. In fact, every time Kanye appears in the episode it's implied to be due to Kim sending him to damage control Wendy, calling her a hobbit. The Hobbit connection when I originally watched it left me scratching my head. It's not that effective as an insult given that hobbits are not portrayed as ugly and fat in the films. Here is where we get to why the episode ends with her photoshopping her own image. She decides to prove to Butters that Kim Kardashian is fake by editing Lisa Berger's photo. However, instead of understanding it, Butters falls in love with the fake image. Note Wendy explicitly asserts this kind of thing destroys the self-image of little girls everywhere. So Butters and every other boy falls in love with the fake image, the comedy deriving from the lie being obvious, yet everyone is fixated on the digital lie Wendy made. Instead of going out with Butters, she goes out with Clyde and becomes entirely superficial, which is intended to represent how Kim Kardashian and others get inflated egos with fake images. Skipping ahead to the point where the psychologist warns her, note she explicitly asserts she will change before going back and doing the same thing over and over again. Leading to Kanye getting more and more desperate. I already covered the Taylor Swift calm above and note asserting that Kim had a film coming out, Hobbit, and that it was based on her reality show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I'll be decoding that show a bit later. But first let's finish off this episode. Like Kim, Lisa gets more and more popular due to her image, and when her friends try to get her to do it for them, she rejects it. Lisa then begins a Britney Spears parody. If I had more time I'd probably break that down, though it's worth mentioning that Britney Spears is also tied into these kinds of comms. September 11, 2007. Britney Spears forgets underwear. September 11, 2007. Kanye West graduation, teddy bear finale. The point being obsessing over fake images. To manipulate the images. Which then hooks all the boys in school on fake images rather than the real girls. With Kanye still in denial and constantly reaffirming that Kim is in fact tied to the stories of Tolkien. That she went on a quest to kill a dragon with dwarves, but then it turns out it was just Quiznos she robbed. Q robbed. That'll be relevant when I get into that show. We've already covered the end, and this whole episode leads to Wendy giving up after Kanye breaks into her house. This was after she went on a news program to fight against fake images and the psychological issues that part of society creates. In that sense it's a sad episode with melancholy at having to not fight against something clearly wrong due to the way society is set up for those with voices. Now let's get into Kim Kardashian. This will help clarify all I've said about Hobbit/Gnome symbolism tied to her. Kim Kardashian. Her fame began just before her show due to a sex tape being released. Notice the first episode called I'm Watching You, with a plot line involving her young child playing on a stripper pole with the Pussycat Dolls. Note during the show she pretends to drink alcohol. There's an entire plot revolving around a cheating boyfriend being confronted by Kim's mother. This plot line, a boy dating her sister despite being much younger, and the revelation is concluded at the end with the revelation that they had an open sex life where they could see other people. All of this is while they get on a talk show named Tyra Banks. What am I getting at? Note the very next episode. The young girls once again taking center stage. In this episode there's a whole scene where they go to the vet and the girls are taught how to put jelly on a dog's penis when it gets too big. To tuck it in. They are shown a demonstration, and it becomes a dad job. What is the point? Well, we've been talking about these sleep ops for a number of celebs tied to Kanye West, and this is no difference. In fact, what is Kim and Kanye called as a couple? Kanye changed his name to Ye. People call them together Kim Ye. K plus Y equals KY jelly symbol. Most commonly used as a lubricant for sexual intercourse and fit together, not just sleeping symbol, and MK but also KY, remember JZZZ is how Kanye got his start. At one point in the first 2 episodes they call their family the Brady Bunch, but with a kick, as in Brady material, and so the whole thing is meant to be comms about a family pretending to be clean while dirty things are done in secret. This ties into the history of Kim, as her original claim to fame was being the daughter of O.J. Simpson lawyer Robert Kardashian. They show a bunch of old videos as they mourn his death. I'm not sure yet what to make of Robert Kardashian and why being his daughter matters. I note that Kanye made that hologram of him. Convinced her to take the bar exam again. Working on the law. I also put another day of comms there as both days connected to ABBA and Kanye news. Though practically every day Kanye has some big news, so it's not that indicative by itself. However, note the name, Kim, in relation to North Korea above. Given as we went over the Kardashian show symbolized hiding things in plain sight, this could connect since NK also connects to that. The most secluded country in the world. But why does this connect to O.J. Simpson? Well, what did he symbolize? When I dug into Kanye West, one symbol jumped out at me. Kanye Quest, a prominent indie game about Kanye West. It is notable for being popular at release July 2013, but what is most notable is that this game hit a quest line that was presented as cult recruitment. It was made in 2013, which was right as he was getting married to Kim. The hidden cult recruitment storyline was accessed with a 6-word question. 6-letter, ascend, to begin your ascension. This is probably nothing, but my pattern sensor picked up that this keyword just so happened to be the resting place of O.J. Simpson's victim. When I looked around the time of her death, I noticed X-Files had an episode of the same name. One of the most famous episodes, as it focused on abducting a pregnant Scully so that she could have her baby. This probably means nothing. It's one of those things where I notice a pattern, and if I keep following it, maybe the patterns will line up in such a way that it becomes clear one way or the other. I haven't dug deep enough to say with this one, but I would just assume it's not, but as I doubt I'll be covering Kanye in a full post again for some time, so I want to leave this thread hanging here for next time I dig into him. Instead of digging into that, I kept digging into O.J. Note tragic death of his daughter, Lash 1, Simpson, born in 1977. His oldest son Jason is also noted as tied to drug abuse and potentially even murder. I suspect O.J., just like with Steve Jobs' public story with his daughter, Lisa, coinciding with The Simpsons. Instead of being computer comms, it's instead being a puppet for punishment. The most famous role of Simpson is in the Naked Gun films, where he plays a man comically getting injured. Taking the fall. Note the day O.J.'s kid was born coincided with an episode of the Beverly Hillbillies called Courtship of Homer Noodleman, hiring a rich person to play a dumb person, so it fits Homer's symbol as a puppet or something like that, hiring an actor/puppet to court play a role in a family. Kids being born tie into ops, in this case puppetry. Football, baseball, Homer. December 4, 1968. Arnell Simpson born, same day as Homer Noodleman episode. Note his wife in Naked Gun being Wilma Flintstones, which is the heritage of Marge Simpson. So put it together with Simpson and it paints a trajectory. So I made a prediction. When I realized he was connected to The Simpsons, I said to myself, well, if that's true, then they must have had an episode that parallels the murder trial. And in fact it may just be the most famous and most controversial episode of The Simpsons of all time. The one with the surprise ending with Simpson being found innocent despite DNA evidence. Episodes happened at the perfect time to juxtapose the trial. Homer acts as a puppet, being an intentionally bad father as a calm for people involved in the same. May 9, 1955, Kermit the Frog introduced. May 10, 1955, Homer Simpson official birthdate. Simpson's symbolism therefore ties into child sacrifice through Bart being intentionally taught wrong and surveillance through Lisa. Homer likely goes back farther as a symbol than the Beverly Hillbilly calm. I did find this curious one. A wealthy child that was likely originally a boy named Homer, an example of what? March 17, 1921, Dr. Marie Stopes and Rowe opens Britain's first birth control clinic in London. March 17, 1921, Little Lord Fauntleroy funeral after highly publicized search for identity. Roe vs. Wade, symbol of abortion. Same day. Note this Little Lord calm of Homer is a British lord to American heir. British heir living in America poor. And Donald Duck middle name, ducking consequences, perhaps. Okay, that's probably too much speculation, so let's get back on stronger topics. Kim Jong/Kim Kar. The North Korea connection is likely for a host of reasons. August 27, 2010. Jimmy Carter negotiated release of American Teacher North Korea. August 27, 2010. Monster Kanye West Black China single. Note the name of the one released, Gomez, like gnomes. Gnome symbolism for people spying on a house. Roughly equivalent to Hobbit symbolism. April 8, 2009. Fishsticks Kanye West South Park. April 9, 2009. North Korea leader Kim Il-thin returns to assembly with new term. This specific description of him as thin in 2009. When I looked through the timeline of NK, one thing jumped out at me. Symbol for Slender Man. Famous child abduction symbol. June 2, 2009. Deathly ill and newly thin Kim Jong-il named successor. June 10, 2009. Slender Man begins. Note how within 10 days it got massive traction in the form of a popular web series starting. Even if the NK connection is wrong, a few things can be gleaned from this. Note top hat above with big mouth, possible symbol tied to pumping something below as it acts as the hat to the following post. Though that's speculation, I do think things like this that become popular are a mix of real and fake. As in there is an element of asking an audience to create, but it's comms-aware people that take it. So they may have known to submit something that would be up for spreading across the internet. This explains why he posted so many memes of his own creation within a day, as it must have taken many hours of work. When I looked at the date given for the first Slender Man attack, July 13, 1986, it was a Friday the 13th. So they wanted to attach that symbol, which left the options for a specific date small. As for why that year? Notice it's tied just like Slender Man origin to the transition of power in NK. I suspect at the time this power struggle was Russia trying to get a hold of NK blackmail ops but failing to do so as China took it. Russia at the time being a Bush ally and China siding with Clinton here and other places, securing the win for Clinton with securing a critical blackmail point. Kanye began his relationship to Kim with this song, A Woman Wearing No Underwear. Note child focus. April 17, 2012. Kim Kardashian love song Kanye. April 17, 2012. Obama nominates Flynn for DIA. Curiously, the same day Flynn DIA, this was around the time of going to Russia. Russia connected to NK setting up their nuclear plant. 1986, same time frame as Chernobyl. Remember the start of the post? Beyoncé and share equals share. Share/share Chernobyl symbolic of keeping blackmail of many. In 2013 after the DIA connection, seemed to be tied to moving data around with Russia. NK connects in the data pipeline. Find any article about North Korea, and it'll often talk about how the people are brainwashed in all sorts of ways and oppressed. It would work as a symbol for MK. Uranium-1 is a big part of Russia and the relationship to what went on with the Clintons. February 9, 2006. Kanye West as Jesus, a famously controversial Rolling Stones cover. February 9, 2006. Southern Cross, SXR Uranium-1, earliest wayback capture of Uranium-1, site post name change. February 9, 2006. SpaceX hot fire test. Launch failure. That connection is not as strong as I'm using a wayback capture as a data point. I tried to find the origin point of Uranium-1 as a name because it was founded as SXR, Southern Cross Resources, SXR. I was able to narrow it down as it seems to have been between the end of 2005 with my data point as the latest possible point. However, I still think it's relevant because those captures happen in relation to internet traffic. The SpaceX data point in relation to the original name SXR. Plus Uranium-1 had just changed its name that year from Southern Cross as in a biblical cross, and Kanye is cosplaying Jesus being nailed to the cross. I feel like there's something here, but I can't quite see it yet. Finally, let's get into those 3 episodes preceding The Hobbit as they also dealt with dragons. South Park Got Dragons. April 17, 2011. Game of Thrones debut. August 8, 2011. Watch the Throne debut, Kanye plus Jay-Z. One of the primary things discussed in this one is Butters talking about the prevalence of male genitalia on Game of Thrones. I found this strange as when I watched it years ago. I noticed tons of female nudity, but there was barely any male. The fact they make half the entire plot be about this is odd and seems now a clear calm. The primary story is about the console wars with each kid picking a side. The Battle of Affiliations. Note the Enterprise kid's new source of Tririlium class M/13 planet. That would be Cartman's symbol as the fuel as he is MK, and spying/brainwashing such a person is how clowns begin, Starfleet. We get into the second Butters discussion over penis in Game of Thrones. All he gets is wiener 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 when expecting dragons. The concept of what is going on with blackmail to create power, versus the symbolism disconnect. Creating a dragon. What does a dragon symbolize? I believe it is a variant of snake symbolism, which is many people working as one. The difference being scope, as a dragon is much more imposing and mobile. This fits into the next scene as this is precisely how blackmail is created. Stop touching me, Elmo. A robot given to kids that molests them. It's typical South Park comedy, but in context right after Butters' discussion of being tired of all the gay wiener, it's likely representing how affiliations are really made. The whole episode is about making allies loyal, and this is precisely how that is done, which made me wonder if the original Tickle Me Elmo was a symbol for the same. I noticed it was made by a Hyman. Type it into Google and it auto-searches for Hyman. The proof of a virgin, that is a suspicious symbol. Note he got his start in 1977 with piano. Keyboard comms. Also, when I looked up Tickle Me Elmo returning, I noticed it was launched the same day of a coup to take over Thailand. Middle left above. September 19, 2006. Thailand coup. September 19, 2006. Tickle Me Elmo returns as TMX. Blackmail is how these kinds of coups happen with controlled figures. It's also how media is controlled and how figureheads to rally the masses are controlled. And as they eagerly await Elmo, this discussion of console wars turns to Betamax, winning the format war. This ties it back to the early 1980s and the Dragon Warrior comms, as the format war was tied to there. Nintendo released their machine specifically to evoke VHS over Betamax, giving affiliations. Upon seeing the threat, Sony gives a bundle which includes a map of Japan. Episode ends with Kenny becoming a princess. Interesting one to dig into given the timing. Note the pony head. This was right around the time My Little Pony brony fandom was escalating, and MK victims would be the most likely as both test subjects for that as well as the most fervent. I tied these comms very clearly into The Simpsons as well. Episode paints out the pony symbolism perfectly. Banksy funding comm. It gave a message they would promote any male-focused fan sites or otherwise promotion online of the Little Girl Pony show. The comms of the episode beginning with the boys hypnotized by a successful woman and then taking on a girl as a role model. Precise symbolism of the brony craze that began that same day. The goal being, in part, psychological warfare likely funded by foreign countries trying to create mental illnesses in the population. This ties into the deeper programming game going on. A promise from Cartman to fight to the death with other kids for consoles. Note Butter's line here. They keep promising dragons, but all I get are more floppy wieners in my face. More and more blackmail. Then we get to George R.R. Martin, who as the joke continues talks up dragons and then just talks about penis. This wiener joke, for people who never watched this show, there are hundreds of scenes of naked women and a tiny fraction of those have naked men. They focus the parody on naked men and proclaim the author to be obsessed with them over and over and over again. It makes no sense at all. Imagine if you did a parody of a Stephen King horror film where you decided he was obsessed with anorexia because one of his dozens of horror books has that as a subject. You probably don't even know which one I'm talking about, Thinner, because the guy has made so many of them. It's one of his least popular works and the same is true of naked men in Game of Thrones. It's arbitrary how small an aspect of the show it is. It wouldn't likely even register to you if they didn't talk about it. However, as a comm this makes sense as it's how dragons are created. Creating a dragon, as in many people working as one. Then Bill Gates offers kids weapons to fight to the death as promised. Because if you recall the Doom comms. December 7, 1993, New York Long Island rail shooting. December 7, 1993, Donald Trump asserts he will re-evaluate life due to the Long Island rail shooting. Remarries. December 10, 1993, Doom released, ID software. December 14, 1993, Aurora, Colorado for dead mass shooting. Though like many tied to it, he's now sending positive comms, remember how the ops work. The ones that brainwash are disconnected from the ones sending comms like this. It's intentionally kept separate. Prizes are offered by some and promise of promotion of certain acts are taken. A ticket to success, and when they get there, that's when blackmail happens. Hence a grown man wagging his penis in front of a kid with the name Butters. The kids fight due to a war between giant companies. Over and over more blackmail. So both of these plot lines escalate, with Sony sleeping with the press and opening a mysterious box. And the wiener talk has now gotten to a party. So, what was in the box? He becomes a pony riding princess. This is precisely what was being pushed on large swatches of easily programmable young men. I already went through it, but I could go even farther. All of it tying into delusions. Which somehow wins the console war. Because the one that gets the media is the one that impresses the people that have money. What do some of the people that control the banks want? They want a lot of different things, including having kids become more transgender to sell more drugs. They want to weaken certain countries, which this also helps do. Thus by making an MK kid but on a dress they win the console war. Note parents juxtaposed with eating their children. And then we get to the Red Robin wedding, reference to Red Wedding. And after the invitation Kenny jumps to his death in what would otherwise be suicide. Symbol for what these psyops do to children, pushing psychology leading to breaking minds and suicide. And then this little point of Beyoncé and Tom Hanks' wedding despite her being with Jay-Z, symbol of cheating. As you may recall, Beyoncé plus Jay-Z is a comm for the sleep blackmailing, so it being a third-party popular celebrity fits perfectly. Cartman defecates in a yard and blames it on Stan. Feces equals evidence as always. And even more talk about penis. I'd say South Park had more talk about this than they had throughout all of Game of Thrones by a factor of 100. It really just makes no sense as a joke, but as a com it does. The redundancy of just more and more blackmail. How the world works it seems. Leading to forced betrayals. With the conclusion of letting the two companies fight it out. Real footage interspersed with him showing just how crazy it gets. Note Elmo and then going for camera. As a fight for puppet strings. With everyone dying. MS-13 reference tattoo. Note the Peanuts music, as Charlie Brown is another origin of both South Park and psyops against kids. I'd like to interpret them going outside as a positive com, but given they then just make the conclusion of selling their own game. I'm not sure. Well, I don't actually think games are always bad for a person. South Park does engage the mind, which is good. I think negative from the earliest years, as the lessons seem just an excuse for depravity at times. Kicking the baby and obsessing over dildos comes to mind, and I think that was just the price of entry for fame. It will grow more brain cells than most shows I'm aware of, which will kill them. Anyway, let's continue. Seattle, Jimi Hendrix, JFK. So I was digging into famous musicians and I noticed Jimi Hendrix died the same day a sequel to a famous book was released. Starring Mickey. September 18, 1970, In the Night Kitchen, Where the Wild Things Are sequel. September 18, 1970, Jimi Hendrix Sleeping Pill Overdose. -1. September 17, 1970, Flip Wilson Show Begins, second most popular show of the 70s, unique at the time for having a black host. When I looked into the book itself, there was some curious iconography. Young boy suddenly loses clothes after going to sleep, named Mickey as in microphone plus symbol for being slipped a Mickey. Quiet, symbol from chefs. Scooping up white liquid while naked and then being dried before woken up. The point being, this looks like a blackmail com, and so if he died around this time, this led me to think perhaps Jimi Hendrix died, but really ducked what may have been on the docket to be unveiled. Anyone at a certain level of popularity is likely to be blackmailed, I think. This would explain the comms I went over last week, which suggested Jimi Hendrix was going to be connected to D-Class. Note he was dealing with court cases, and most importantly Billy Cox, phonetic comm, was leaving his band just before he died. Note they met in the army. So. Military connection, and this got me to dig into the original book. The closest interesting date. November 11, 1963, JFK Jr. Red Shoes Veterans Day 9 days before death. November 13, 1963, Where the Wild Things Are Maurice 20 million sold. November 22, 1963, JFK Murder. I believe the book was meant to represent a response, that JFK wasn't scared of the threats, and that those involved had blackmail that could be exposed at a moment's notice if they step out of line. This is why the MK world shifted so hard to hiding killers to avoid culpability. Anyway, the calm of trying to scare with threats, but to no avail. They had control over plants due to blackmail. So, let's reconcile that with Jimi Hendrix. Note he was born in Seattle. JFK coincided with the building of the Seattle Observation Tower. Jimi Hendrix's most famous song, All Along the Watchtower. September 18, 1970, In the Night Kitchen Where the Wild Things Are sequel. September 18, 1970, Jimi Hendrix Sleeping Pill Overdose. September 19, 1970, Washington Senators 14 lose streak inexplicable for rest of year. This could be coincidence, but it'll have to wait for a future post as I need to dig deeper. One thing that comes to mind about this though is JFK on coins, how JFK was picked for the $50 and Sacagawea was put on the silver dollar. Story of 13-year-old girl being wed against her will to an adult. This could tie into early ops using kids as bartering chips. These things have been going on much longer than the film industry necessary to. When I looked into her date, I noticed she had 2 different dates of deaths, so that's likely a com. The second one being very curious. February 7, 1884. Brussels Observatory extremely bright point of light on planet Venus. 9 days later it moves out from the planet. February 12, 1884. Alice Lee Roosevelt is born. February 14, 1884. Alice Roosevelt died 2 days after birth. X light gone out from my life. April 09, 1884. Sacagawea death. Tying to Teddy Roosevelt's daughter, Alice, being born then 2 days dying. I suspect this was some kind of calm for an end to an operation. Tied to Teddy Roosevelt taking out whoever was in control at the time. Also, that story about a teddy bear. I've talked frequently in posts about how South Park portrays Teddy Roosevelt. Well, what kind of calms came out at that time? October 1902. Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. Children's Literature English 45 million. November 1902. Teddy Bear Origin. Sparing the chained-up teddy bear. Follows mischievous and disobedient young Peter Rabbit as he gets into, and is chased around, the garden of Mr. McGregor. He escapes and returns home to his mother, who puts him to bed after offering him chamomile tea. Peter Rabbit equals Beatrix Potter. Same time as the Teddy Roosevelt calm. This reminds me that Weird Al Yankovic is played by the actor who played Harry Potter in his biopic. I also had a request for Weird Al. Note his birth date is the same as a Twilight episode about someone constantly rewatching old movies. A perfect symbol for Weird Al, whose entire career is in repackaging other people's songs. Songs like his original hit, Another One Rides the Bus, equals Another One Bites the Dust. As in people joining due to people dying. His parodies function as complementary calms for the original yet look like nonsense outside of that. Though that's a larger topic I've barely scratched the surface of. I'll likely cover it in the future as it could be educational to deconstruct a parody in relation to the original. Gives a more precise reading of both, I'm sure. Anyway, one more artist. Yet another requested one. Tupac. As always. I look at the major dates connected. I noticed he died on a Friday the 13th. That instantly strikes me as another potential fake death symbol. Note he died the same day a game, House of the Dead, was released. Seems Tupac may have died to duck court charges. Note he had multiple court cases pending. September 13, 1996. Tupac died. September 13, 1996. House of the Dead released. September 16, 1996. Courtroom reality show Judge Judy premieres with Bailiff Bird. When I dug a little deeper, I noticed a potential origin symbol for Tupac. Terrorist group. After his death, a guy took on his symbolism in the WWF. X-Pac. August 10, 1997. Designated terrorist group Tupac Amaru Revolutionary Movement United States 2001 10 November 19 0808. 97 D Generation X X-Pac. Officially Tupac as a symbol for both the rapper and terrorist group comes from this guy from the 1700s. May 11, 1781. Sombrero Galaxy discovered, in the 1990s developed a black hole supermassive. May 18, 1781. Tupac Amaru II executed. March 14, 1995. Tupac album Me Against the World released. March 14, 1995. Black holes in the Sombrero Galaxy Mexico Conference. Discovering a galaxy, as in finding individuals tied to him. A famous symbol tied to terrorists. This fits into the modern ops using terrorist groups to take over by rallying the people. I can't think of a more precise symbol for that very thing than Tupac Amaru. This connection is more clear when I looked at the most famous date tied to the terrorist group. Note the plot of House of the Dead. Begins December 18, 1998. September 13, 1996. Tupac died. September 13, 1996. House of the Dead released. December 17, 1996. Tupac Amaru seizure of diplomats 23 members. December 18, 1998. House of the Dead date future plot. April 22, 1997. Tupac Amaru hostage crisis ends. It's not exact, but the fact that the plot of House of the Dead would take place in the future on December 18th, and then the most famous moment for the terrorist group Tupac Amaru would begin December 17th and then last for half a year. Could be coincidence, but this feels like a marker for an event that was pre-planned. Another artist I looked into for a bit. Lionel Richie. Could be nothing. February 13, 1984. Hello, is it me you are looking for? Lionel Richie, symbol of answering phone, February 13, 1984. Ma Bell Phone Company dissolved. Turned into Baby Bells like AT&T. Kind of funny if that's the symbol though. Video ties the symbolism to the removal of a place, just like Bell. I need to dig more to confirm, and the date is only on a few websites that gave no citations, so it's hard to confirm. Feels like a comedic way to symbolize the transition, but it could be something else. Maybe I'll cover it another time. Another one this week. February 28, 1949, time for Beanie Show. Propeller Hat Origin Show. Plus 6 days. March 4, 1949, CIA Funding Act introduced in Congress. Google uses it as an icon, so seems to tie into CIA funding symbolism. Addendum to last post. Jack the Ripper. Update to last post, Reeves' answer. I decoded various celebrities tied to Reeves. I decoded it being tied to media support, and I decided to keep digging and found the origin point for the name. Reeves is the person to begin the Jack the Ripper case. The origin point for the first big story media. This fits perfectly with my decode. The guy who initially reported the body kicking off the greatest news story in the history of the world. Which sounds like I'm exaggerating, and it should be given how few bodies there were, but we are talking about press hype. Find something with more hype behind it than Jack the Ripper back then. When I dug into this for comms, I noticed a famous Reeves being in a play that lasted for way longer than normal. March 21, 1888, Reeves' Sweet Lavender play opens Romance of Hale and Ralt play ran 684 performances unusually long run. April 3, 1888, Reeves finds Jack the Ripper timeline begins Emma Smith local prostitute. March 12, 1888, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde play begins. Shuts down later due to accusations of being Jack the Ripper. August 30, 1888, Lord Walsingham kills 1,070 grouse in a single day. September 8, 1888, in England the first 6 Football League matches ever are played. And we can take this even further. September 30, 1888, Jack the Ripper murders 2 more women, Liz Stride and Kate Eddowes, in Whitechapel, London. December 26, 1888, Isoline Opera opens. September 21, 1947, Isoline Opera Revival. September 21, 1947, Stephen King born. It gives us the origin of Stephen King's symbolism. Literally tying him to Jack the Ripper media hype. Isoline seems to be a calm during the height of the media fever about Jack the Ripper, and its revival just so happened to be the day Stephen King was born. The most famous horror story author tied to the most famous real-life horror story. There's quite a few other threads I could follow here, but it's time to finish this up. Updates. I've gone over Phillies symbolism for funding last time. I got a tip on this. November 5, 2022, Philadelphia Phillies lose the World Series to Houston Astros 4-2. November 5, 2022, Philadelphia Union lose the MLS Cup in a shootout to LAFC, 3-3 tie, then lost 3-0 in shootout. November 7, 2022, Evelyn de Rothschild died. November 6, 2022, November 11, 2022, for Q posts with money/funding discussed, Ukraine funding, Fed stealing from you. November 11, 2022, FTX files for bankruptcy. Dem's second biggest donor. Largest or second largest crypto exchange. Note Rothschild dying in the second biggest crypto exchange blowing up, also second largest Dem donor at the top of it. Likely all coordinated, banking symbolism. Phillies losing would indicate unlike prior attempts to crash the market, this one failed, making certain figures rich while the rest suffered. I've gone over before how crypto ties into the MK world. How a specific activation can be funded, how drugs can be purchased to set someone on the wrong path. And many others. Perhaps the most visible figure for crypto would have been John McAfee. See if you can understand the meaning of some of these posts. That seemed to be a prior push, now it's more about Ukraine. Speaking of which. November 12, 2022, Banksy unveils Ukraine gymnast mural on building shelled by Russia, involves Putin being flipped by Russian president is a judo black belt, judo being Japanese, note sensei, prominent next to one. Murals involve flipping. Crypto to open the door bankruptcy, and midterms as well as other things. Russian president is a judo black belt and noted admirer of the martial art. This concept of martial arts tied to riots is one I've covered. Note the art used in Street Fighter 2. Black man being beaten as highlight of both the arcade cabinet and the intro cinematic. February 6, 1991, Street Fighter 2 arcade released, revolutionary game, with. March 3, 1991, Rodney King is beaten by 4 white police officers on videotape. April 5, 1992, LA riots triggered from acquittal of Rodney King officers. June 10, 1992, Street Fighter 2 released on home consoles. The symbol originating from. August 1968, Street Fighting Man released Rolling Stone Street Fighter Riot song. August 1968, DNC riots. This is how pushes are marked and even at times coordinated with. Taking over by creating scandals as the public views whoever is in control as failing to do so and removes them from power. Notice the mascot of Street Fighter Ryu, with his special ability to shoot a fireball as well as do a dragon punch, a forbidden one-hit kill move. In both cases it fit into ops to replace the political structure of a country. To insert Clinton and Rodney King was one of many bullets that paved that road. Tying it to martial arts may give us a clue about martial arts as a com. The meaning of Bruce Lee being killed, for example. Note the main character of Mortal Kombat is a parody of Bruce Lee. A man who died suspiciously, and his son did the same. Untangling the tapestry is tough, but we are getting there. Figuring out what was fake and what was real, there is clearly an atmosphere of fear being placed into the community for those who might think of talking. When I think about prominent martial arts in media, Street Fighter has Ryu the karate master with the symbol of dragon punches, and MK has Louis Kong who has Bruce Lee symbolism and dragon symbolism. This is just me spitballing here. Karate equals car/M car driving. Kim Kardashian. Kim, MK mirrored from NK, plus car plus dashing. This is just a random place my digging brought me to, probably nothing, but we see these names and dates over and over again. Local places being used for messaging and coordination. However, another popular martial arts in media is jiu-jitsu/judo. So if we were to consider them as comms. One is about punching/kicking. The other is about flipping a person. Remember the army of Jew bots in South Park? This got me thinking, Jew might have a connotation of blackmail when used as a comm. Jiu-jitsu equals flipping, blackmail comms Jew-doe/judo equals flipping someone again. This might not be right, and I hate saying anything negative about the concept of Judaism, but it is prominent disinfo point, so there is surely comms tied to it. Mossad is tied strongly to blackmail, so Jew might be something similar to this as a symbol. Which means phonetics would also tie into it. Usually I wouldn't present a theory this rough until I had way more data to prove/reject it. I mostly put this theory forward because it gives me an excuse to talk about recent news with Kanye West. Kanye recently screwed himself oddly by going on to topics that have been called anti-Semitic. In one example he replaces black with Jew and references himself as Jew in another. Note the two most recent ones. Telling a fellow rapper, "I told you this was war," and then the final one, Death Con 3. Symbol of nuclear war coming. Replacing Def Con with Death Con, this might be a reference to the people who aren't really dead. Nuclear, as in boom, and that is what it would be if certain people who are actually alive but pretending to be dead return to make a giant news story. Like for example how Kanye gave Kim a hologram of her dead father. ABBA also had holograms discussed in media. Which I mention because ABBA record same day as Kanye praising Trump. Plus, accuser speaks, above, smiles from Kim Kardashian. So it could be that hologram Kanye gave was some kind of indication that the dead hiding somewhere are to return and act as a boom. Death Con instead of Defcon, as he said. Though this is just me guessing, I do think such a path would be the most logical way to shock people awake though. Note his net worth went from widely reported as $6.6 billion, 666 symbolism, to $400 million. I suspect this was in part to give Adidas cover to break off the deal without any kind of lost revenue. It's possible they are about to fund something with the amount switched over. Though that's speculative. It could also be a ton of other things. One com I have covered in past posts that I'll remind you of is he did run against Trump in 2020, and I've actually decoded this. Note blue, Democrat, plus muscle suit, pumped up. Symbolism of Kanye pumping up the Dem vote. Switching a third-party vote electronically is one major way voter fraud happens. Likely votes for Kanye were switched to Biden as one of several routes they went for with voter fraud. This is why it connects to Elon Musk, as he is connected to the deployment/funding. All of it setting up court in the future. Note the symbol tied to weight change again. Same symbol used for ballots. All of that is being dismantled now, and then perhaps we can finally start having real conversations with the people in control of us. Absurd to think this basic thing has been impossible for centuries due to a code of silence and brainwash making people reject truth. We need to learn so many more comms still. For example, I was asked to look into the T20 cricket match, apparently full of surprises. However, to understand what the heck is going on, I would first have to decode cricket itself. The most famous cricket player has a name, Bradman, which sounds an awful lot like a Brady evidence comm. The only time I've heard of cricket in a comm that comes to mind is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. An odd exchange between Casey Jones and Raphael, among the most famous scenes from the movie. Where he misses with baseball bats until he switches to cricket, which confuses Raphael, and then he hits him into the trash can. My at-a-glance theory is that since TMNT is tied to a shell comm, then being able to beat him with cricket instead of baseball represents going after him internationally. In which case the symbolism might be tied to criminal justice. It fits contextually, but I need to dig a lot deeper to confirm/reject it. Anyway, just a random thought there. I rarely ever guess perfectly when it comes to these comms. It is only with hard work that I dig out the truth with patterns. Even with all these tools though, I'm still at a loss on how to characterize the perspective of the many sides in and out of power right now. I don't know how involved many of these companies were. It's possible some are just making markers for the events, and at times I have even found that some of those markers are for an opposing side, letting it be known their disapproval. So don't assume the worst. Talking about child abuse and brainwash does not necessarily mean they agree with it, and even when parties make pro-abuse comms, it can at times be because they were forced to buy their own blackmail. Nintendo and Ubisoft have been sending positive comms the last few years. Clearly cooperating with the larger effort by the military. One comm sent by both companies is through games they made. This Rabbids game. Note the dialogue given. This bit about a reenactment of a human sacrifice being demanded by the banana gods to kill his unemployed brother-in-law. Note the reaction, but I'm not so sure. The symbol potentially being people making excuses for why they engaged in this MK system. Why they abused a relative or neighbor and broke their brain. Some people who engaged in that system likely had no choice lest they would be killed. The world is complex. So I advise you not to assume the worst motive just because I decode something disturbing. What I decode is often devoid of major parts needed for proper context due to my own inexperience. In time, we will gain clarity, and I suspect the people most responsible for the horrors of the world are unlikely to be ones hired to make a cartoon or game or song about it. I view things optimistically and believe that often these media pieces are simply what is expected. The entry fee into that world. A tragic cost meant to keep otherwise good people silent as they taint their own hands in such a way that they feel a part of a monstrous beast. I reject that notion, and this is why I make these posts as neutral as possible. Just paying the entrance fee to have a voice or job should not necessarily by itself condemn anyone. On the off chance involved people read my posts, I don't want them to see an angry mob. At least not angry at the ones that are working to tear down the hellscape. The only ones that can do that are inside that world. I want them to see an environment of education. I'm trying to educate people to know the world. To be a part of the real world rather than driven by the whims of some jackass that wants more school shooters to distract from whatever the scandal of the week is. Imagine a world where people actually knew what the heck was actually going on. I do as much as I can to this end, and anyone that has read this far can help steer my next move. Will my next post be sports? Games? Music? Movies? I try to start every post from a request so that I can keep my audience involved. So just go to the Telegram and type request, and I will see it, and within a week you'll get a reply from me. It may or may not become a basis of my next post, but this is a first step you can take from reader to I don't know, whatever it is you call me. Never forget my decoding began from digging into holes. Q pointed out. Telegram chat. Join our Telegram group. Send leads, begin decoding. This has been I Dream of Yeezy.